Dear you, there is a difference between being alive and feeling alive. You didn't notice when that difference began to matter to you. For a long time, surviving felt like enough. You woke up, you moved through the day, you completed what needed to be done. You adapted, you coped, you handled things. And because you could, you didn't question whether you should. You told yourself this was what adulthood looked like. You told yourself that not every day was supposed to feel meaningful, but slowly, almost quietly, something inside you began to feel thin. You noticed it in the way days blended together, in how weeks passed without leaving a clear memory, in how you reached the end of a day and couldn't quite say what you felt. You weren't unhappy in an obvious way. There was no single problem demanding attention. That's what made it so confusing. You had reasons to be grateful. You had stability in some form. You had things that worked. And yet, beneath all of that, there was a sense of emotional flatness, like you were moving through life on reduced settings. You didn't feel dramatic enough to complain. You didn't feel broken enough to ask for help, so you kept going, assuming that this low-level numbness was just part of being responsible, part of being grown, part of being realistic. You survived your days efficiently. You managed your emotions quickly. You kept things under control. And while that competence kept you functional, it also kept you distant from yourself. You reacted instead of reflected. You endured instead of experienced. You solved problems without asking whether they were worth solving in the first place. There were moments, small, unexpected moments, when this realization brushed against you. When music didn't hit the way it used to. When laughter felt a little hollow. When something good happened and you noticed the response came late, muted, delayed. Those moments didn't devastate you, but they unsettled you. They made you wonder when you stopped feeling fully present inside your own life. You didn't talk about this feeling because it sounded vague. I feel like I'm just surviving. Didn't seem like a real complaint. You told yourself other people had it worse. You told yourself to push through. You told yourself to be patient, and patience became another form of endurance. If you're reading this and feeling a quiet recognition, it's because many people live this way for a long time without realizing what they're missing. Survival becomes the baseline, and when survival lasts too long, it quietly replaces living. You weren't failing. You weren't lazy. You were coping in a world that often asks for coping more than presence. Survival mode doesn't arrive with alarms. It builds through repetition, through days where you tell yourself to just get through this part, through moments where feeling deeply seems inconvenient, through choices to postpone joy, curiosity, or rest because there's something more urgent to handle. Your past self understands now why survival became your default. You lived in a constant state of response. Something always needed attention, work, relationships, expectations, plans. And when life feels like a series of demands, the nervous system adapts by narrowing focus. It prioritizes efficiency. It minimizes feeling. It conserves energy. This is not a failure of character. It's a biological and emotional response. You weren't choosing numbness, you were choosing functionality, and for a while, that choice worked. You stayed steady, you stayed capable, you stayed afloat, but survival mode isn't meant to be permanent. When it lingers, it begins to dull the parts of you that experience pleasure, meaning, and connection. You didn't stop caring. You stopped having space to feel what you cared about. You also learned to equate stability with success. As long as nothing was falling apart, you assumed things were fine. But fine is not the same as fulfilled. Fine is not the same as alive. And over time, the absence of crisis became mistaken for well-being. Your past self sees now that part of the disconnection came from emotional efficiency. You learned how to move past feelings quickly, how to regulate yourself without lingering, how to avoid dwelling. Those skills helped you survive difficult moments, but they also trained you to bypass emotional depth. Depth requires time. Depth requires attention. Depth requires slowing down, and slowing down didn't feel safe when life kept asking you to keep up. Another layer of this experience was expectation. You expected yourself to be resilient, adaptable, composed. You expected yourself to handle things without complaint. And because you met those expectations, no one questioned whether you were actually okay, including you. Survival mode often hides behind competence. You might have wondered why rest didn't feel restorative, why time off didn't refill you, why you felt strangely detached even during good moments. The answer wasn't that you needed more stimulation or distraction. It was that you needed permission to exit survival and re-enter experience. Your past self understands now that living requires vulnerability. It requires allowing moments to affect you. It requires being open to joy as much as pain. And when you've been protecting yourself for a long time, openness can feel risky. You weren't broken for surviving. You were successful at it. But survival was never meant to be the destination. It was meant to be a bridge. And recognizing that doesn't mean you've wasted time. It means you're ready for something different. Right now, I want to speak to the part of you that feels tired of just getting through. The part that wonders if life can feel more than manageable. The part that quietly hopes for depth without knowing how to reach it. You are allowed to want more than survival. Not more achievement, not more pressure, but more presence. Living doesn't require a dramatic change. You don't need to overhaul your life or chase constant happiness. Living begins with allowing yourself to feel without rushing, without minimizing, without immediately moving on. You can start gently. Notice moments that spark even a small response. Notice when something feels interesting, soothing, or grounding. Notice when you feel disconnected and pause instead of pushing through. These notices are not tasks. They are openings. You don't have to leave survival mode all at once. It loosens gradually. As you create moments of safety for yourself, as you allow yourself to linger in experiences instead of managing them. As you stop treating emotions as obstacles and start treating them as information, you are allowed to slow down emotionally. You are allowed to enjoy things without justification. You are allowed to feel deeply again, even if it feels unfamiliar. Some days, living will feel subtle. Not exciting, not overwhelming, just real. Other days you may slip back into survival. That doesn't erase progress. It means your system is learning. If you're listening to this and feeling seen, it's because many people live in survival longer than they need to. They confuse endurance with purpose. They confuse coping with living. And there is relief in realizing you don't have to stay there forever. You don't need permission from anyone else to live. You don't need to wait for the right time. You don't need to earn your way out of survival. You can begin now quietly, by letting yourself experience moments without rushing past them. One day, you'll notice that life feels fuller, not because everything is perfect, but because you're present for it. Because you're not just managing your days, you're inhabiting them. You were strong when you needed to survive. You are allowed to soften now. Living is not a luxury. It's your right. Take a slow breath. Let it ground you here. You're not behind. You're not failing. You're just ready to move from surviving to living. Sincerely, you